And wake up, everybody. Welcome into Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
We've got a busy show for you as we barrel towards war. There's usually a couple of pieces that go into preparing us for war. The first piece, of course, is the media and the propaganda is being, is flooding us right now. And of course, that's what we're seeing right now. The propaganda is hitting social media in a big, big way as we prepare for this next stage of the war with the United States and Israel going to war against Iran. Glenn Greenwald is going to be joining us to talk about that piece of it first.
We're also going to have Colonel McGregor to talk about the actual war preparation, the banging of the drums, and what is actually happening on the military side. Also, a new move from celebrities. They say we are back to McCarthyism and they have to fight back. It is ridiculous. They don't even understand McCarthyism, but we do. We're going to talk about this cosplaying of victimhood and how, they're just the next Rosa Parks. Clayton, this is bravery.
We feel really terrible for them. We're also going to talk about new video evidence in the Charlie Kirk assassination. And it's going to be interesting to have this discussion. We'll have that a little bit later in the show for you. Jason Goodman's going to be joining us from Crowdsource the Truth to go over that on the show today as well. So we got a lot of news to get to. We've got a lot of guests on this Thursday. Thank you guys for subscribing and being a part of our community here. Before we get to Glenn Greenwald, we want to talk about our friends over at Cove Pure because we don't talk about water nearly enough. Clean drinking water is one of the best investments you can make for your family's health. That's why we need to talk about Cove Pure. Now, we've been using it for the last couple of weeks in our house. We have it sitting right in our kitchen, and the kids love it because you can get cold water just by pressing the button. You can get room temperature water by pressing the button, or you can get hot water if you want to make a hot tea really fast. It's all available right there. But that's just the temperature part of it, because when people take their medicines, their medications, their bodies don't absorb all of the medicines, but much of that stuff gets flushed down the toilet. Water treatment plants are horrible at filtering out those leftover pharmaceuticals. So things like antibiotics, antidepressants, even hormone disruptors are in a lot of your tap water, even stuff from birth control pills. No wonder our society is so messed up. Luckily, Cove Pure is lab certified to remove up to 99.9% of impurities. That includes fluoride, PFAs, agricultural runoff, and of course, all those pharmaceutical drugs. This thing they've got the reverse osmosis system built right into it. A lot of people, reverse osmosis systems for your house cost thousands of dollars, not Cove Pure. So go check them out today. You wouldn't, take a stranger's drug prescription, would you? Why accept their leftovers in your water? Protect yourself by going to covepure.com/redacted. Right now, for a limited time, you'll get $200 off your Cove Pure. That's covepure.com/redacted. All right. Thank you guys for joining us today. Let us know where you're joining us from. Yes, it does remove fluoride. Brooker in our chat wants to know about.
It's fantastic. Yeah, we use it. My daughter had a cold, and I made her a tea from it the other day. And, really easy to get hot water, like any kind of water cooler in your office. I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can always tell when the U.S. and Israel are getting ready to launch another war because the online propaganda gets turned up to 11. This week, we learned that Israel is paying U.S. influencers, content creators, around $7,000 per online post, promoting Israel, slamming Qatar, the normal talking points. Benjamin Netanyahu met this past week with a group of these influencers to give them some marching orders. Watch.
Christian influencers. Okay. You said, we talked about the woke right, and you said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. They're insane. They're delusional.
So he went on to talk all about how we need our influencers. We're losing basically the war for our minds. We're losing the information war, and we need our influencers. All of you sitting around this table, we need you. Go back.
He literally said, now we have TikTok. This deal's going through, and we have it. That's anti-Semitic to say that the Jews own any media. So you've been busted, Benjamin Netanyahu, for saying something anti-Semitic, that we own the media.
Benjamin Netanyahu is an anti-Semite. We've called them out. But anyway, all these influencers who are sitting around this table were just sitting there like, yeah, we really, thank you. We're getting our marching orders. So go back to your respective areas and start posting information. Well, his message worked because shortly after that meeting, we started getting these types of cringy video posts from influencers. Watch.
Hey guys, wow, I am feeling good about the news out of DC today. So I love seeing Bibi and Trump together and their camaraderie. I think it just makes me really happy. And I'm happy to see them on great terms after the drama with Qatar, which, by the way, I never understood. Like, can you imagine if the U.S. went into Pakistan to kill Osama bin Laden and the Western world was mad about that?
Yeah, so Qatar, of course, is a key piece of this, right? Yeah, we have a new influencer list, by the way. Let's put this up on the screen. This is the FARA registration list that shows that Israel paid $900,000 for U.S. influencers from July through December 2025. This is a list of identified pro-Israeli influencers who attended the Israel influencer events between August and September, and the Israel 365 trip to Israel. This is, and also Bill Ackman's Hampton retreat and Netanyahu's influencer event.
No, notice we said through December 2025. So we're not done getting this, you guys. The assignments are still out. We're still going to be the recipients of that kind of content.
Can we put that back up on the screen, though? Because you'll see, I think at the very top, you'll see, are those the two individuals in this next video? Or Emily Saves America? Yeah, anyway, you'll see Xavier Derasi and another individual there. And this video, this one is the cringiest one you're going to see, but, just take a look. We'll play just a few seconds of it. I have to turn it off pretty quickly because it's so painful to watch. Watch.
Imagine supporting people who start wars just to lose the wars so they can cry about it and then try it all again.
You must see anti-Semites are literally obsessed with Jews. Now walk with me. While you must see anti-Semites...
I can't.
So they go on about how you don't like Jews because you're so jealous of them because they're so successful, which again is a racist generalization. But that's the assignment, right, is to push down at people who push back at Israel at all. Well, Glenn Greenwald has been covering this propaganda for decades, and he's here to break it down. So, Glenn, as a Jewish person, would you like to let us know how this hits you? Do you feel vindicated with this propaganda about how awesome Jews are?
First of all, I have to register my objection to I've been covering this for decades because it makes me sound like I'm 85. Let's say 2 decades and we can settle on that. Gives me just enough expertise without making me super old. Actually, if you had played that video to the end, I absolutely do not blame you for not doing it. I watched it once and probably couldn't endure it again. Part of what you're seeing there is this kind of very transparent, brazen attempt to commandeer Gen Z identity politics and jargon and online discourse to be almost playful in generating support for Israel. So you have that black gay person there who's overplaying the black gay, mannerisms to be some kind of like Gen Z influencer to make Israel seem like hip and almost, edgy and the like. But the more offensive aspect of it is the script, which couldn't really be designed to generate anti-Semitism more acutely if that were the goal. It goes on to say, and I think you pointed this out, that basically it's saying the only reason you dislike Jews is not because the state of Israel is engaging in a genocide and controlling American politics and commandeering all of its resources. The reason you hate Jews is because we're so successful and so powerful and so rich that you're just jealous of our money and power. And that basically is out of Mein Kampf. I don't, understand why that's considered to be a pro-Israel or pro-Jewish message.
Well, you bring up a great point, which is about the messaging. And so many of these influencer campaigns, they come with talking points. They're given really like a one sheet with bullet points of like what we want you to say. Put it, say it in your own words. But we want to definitely hit on. It seems I'm going to ask you this question, but it seems like we want you to hit on Qatar. We want you to talk about anti-Semitic. It seems like a couple of talking points. We know from this reporting that it's $7,000 per post, but do we have any idea what the actual bullet points or talking points that Israel wants these influencers to espouse?
Yeah, there's been a term for coordinated Israeli propaganda for a long time, which is Hasbara, and that's what this is. Israel probably is the most sophisticated state for disseminating and coordinating propaganda of any in the world. The United States is pretty good. China is pretty good. But I think the Israelis have demonstrated the greatest adeptness. I've seen here in Brazil, for example, where I've lived and I've been involved in politics and journalism for a long time, I've seen very hardcore left-wing politicians who are gay or who are black or who are pro-Palestinian in line with standard left-wing politics, go on one of these sponsored trips to Israel. they get put through a very specific type of propaganda. So if you're black, you meet black Israelis. If you're gay, they take you to gay bars in Tel Aviv. And they all come back, suddenly espousing the glories of Zionism. And I think the best way to understand what the script is you look at the largest pro-Israel outlets, kind of the arms of the Israeli state, like the Free Press. And yeah, one of the primary points is to say, oh, you don't have to worry about foreign influence from Israel. The real source of foreign influence that's insidious and shaping the minds of your children is actually coming from Qatar. And, what I always say about that is when the United States Congress starts making daily pilgrimages to Doha or sending billions of dollars every year to Qatar or going to war for Qatar or expelling students for protesting against the Qatari leaders, that's when I'll start to believe that Qatar is the real source of foreign influence. But that is part of the coordinated messaging.
Or they'll shut down the giant U.S. military base in Doha, Qatar, right? Or President Trump will suddenly decide, and his whole family will suddenly decide to not go forward with the multi-billion-dollar golf course resort that they've been planning, that the Trump family has been planning for a long time. So suddenly, if that pulls back and they close the military base in Doha, yeah, maybe you'd be onto something there.
The thing is, Xavier DeRusso has been on Redacted, and I appreciated some of his comments on Black Lives Matter. He was with PragerU. I didn't understand that connection at the time to Zionist agenda. And so then I feel like this was a really long game, is sort of infiltrate conservative movements with people who are not speaking about Israel, and then this popularity gives them the window to promote Zionism. And gosh, this is decades in the making, this kind of garden, right?
It's insidious.
Well, yeah, when, after Charlie Kirk was murdered, one of the reasons why there was so much focus on the tension that he had between himself and Turning Point funders was precisely to illustrate exactly this dynamic, namely that, people understood very early on that Charlie Kirk was this kind of singularly charismatic figure. He was able to unite people. He was going to have a lot of influence. I know people who the first time they met him walked away saying, he's going to be a senator or the head of the RNC or the president of the United States. And when you see somebody like that and they start to grow and they're very well financed and they operate this organization that has immense influence, obviously there's a war over what kinds of positions they're going to take on issues that power centers care most about. And a huge amount of funding, a huge amount of donors that went into making Turning Point USA what it became were extremely pro-Israel. And as Charlie Kirk recognized that the generation he represents, and all polls show this, became increasingly not just skeptical of Israel, but negative toward it. He understood that he needed to be a lot more open on this issue. That's when he started hosting debates, gathering, Dave Smith at his Turning Point conference, letting Tucker Carlson go on and on about how Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. And there were actually, not just Jewish billionaires threatening to withdraw funding, but actually withdrawing funding. So that's what they do, is they infiltrate every single movement to try and make sure that covertly or otherwise it ends up being pro-Israel, even if on the surface the organization has nothing to do with Israel.
Now, the comments on these videos have been horrible. And the ratio is that most people hate it and see right through it. And they have tons of views, which means it's being promoted, but very few likes and terrible comments, which tells me that it's not working. Now, something that I wasn't able to put my finger on until you had Nick Fuentes on your show just a few days ago is, what is the alternative to this, loving message? And he said it beautifully. It's apathy. It's like, we don't care. We're not going to even watch this. Don't care about Israel. Just turn the other way. Focus on, keep your eyes on your own paper type thing. And what that so clearly says to me is, follow my lead and don't care about this. Don't watch it. Don't think about it. Have no opinion about Israel, and then they can carry on. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons why I had Nick on my show is because I think he's one of the most astute observers of how, especially the American right, functions and how Israel tries to keep it captive to this pro-Israel agenda, even though they've rebranded as America First, and we're supposed to put the United States first and not foreign governments, and certainly not Israel. And this is something that you see principally from people like Matt Walsh, who obviously works for Ben Shapiro, so that tells you all you need to know about Matt Walsh and what he's up to. But one of the things that is so important is, people understand that that young Americans are done with Israel. They're not going to become pro-Israel again. They're not going to cheer for Israel. They're not going to punish politicians who criticize Israel or who want to question funding to Israel. And so the second best tactic is to say, you know what? Israel has nothing to do with us. Let's just wash our hands of it. Let's not think about it. Let's not talk about it. Let's only focus on what's best for our country. And while that may be an appealing message sort of in the vacuum, like in and of itself, like, yeah, let's focus on our own country and not Israel. What that really does is it tries to distract attention away from the fact that our government and our country, both parties, are paying immense attention to Israel, financing Israel, arming Israel, isolating ourselves from the rest of the world to protect Israel, going to war for Israel, censoring our own speech in the United States to protect Israel. And so while this kind of like, hey, let's have apathy and ignore this issue seems appealing on the surface, what it's really doing is basically insisting that everybody who wants to make the United States a vassal state of Israel be permitted to do so without any further scrutiny.
Right.
No, it's a great point.
It's ridiculous.
But it's a brilliant move, though, because now you're going to hear and pay it. I just want our audience like to pay more attention to it from like conservative commentators and so forth who purport to be America first. And you're going to hear a lot more of them saying this, which is, it's over there. The Palestinian Israeli, it's over there. I'm focused on America. Our southern borders are being overrun. Yeah, our entire government is shut down, but we still managed to shovel billions of dollars to Israel. So, yeah, you're America first. Sure you are. Glenn, we'll get you out of here on this. I'm curious. It seems like we're seeing a lot of similarities right now to the run up to the first portion of this phase one, I guess you will, of the Israel-United States war against Iran, a few months ago. Do you see any similarities, what we're seeing right now, to what we saw back then before the next phase two begins?
Absolutely. I would be shocked if there wasn't another attack, certainly one carried out by the Israelis, but obviously with the approval of the United States, coordinated with the United States, if not involving direct United States participation again, on Iran within the next few months, if not the next few weeks. All of the messaging makes that clear. The Israelis have been saying that while the U.S. was had a great success in bombing those facilities, that the know-how and even the material to build a nuclear weapon continues to exist, that the Iranians continue to pursue it. And once you start disseminating that rhetoric, the only logical conclusion based on what you did the first time is to say we have to actually initiate a military conflict in order to do it. I just want to quickly add, though, that one of the things that was blocked out by the Israeli censors and the media censors in Israel was the fact that Israel sustained a great amount of damage from Iranian ballistic missiles. And they got to the point where they had to end the war, both the United States and the Israelis did, because they were running short on the stockpiles that intercept missiles, ballistic missiles. The United States was using it. The Israelis were using it that it gets from the United States. And so the idea was they had to stop the war with the intention of restarting it only once they could resupply those interceptors. And there's about 20 to 25% of the world's supply of missile interceptors now stationed in Israel precisely to protect it from the consequences of its own aggression.
So this break, not only it served a purpose, it was a reload.
It was a recess on purpose.
But for the Iranians as well, they're rebuilding they understand that better than anybody, and they're rebuilding their ballistic missile capabilities and other capabilities as well. And I think if there is an outbreak, you're going to see a lot of damage done again to Israel.
The great Glenn Greenwald, you can follow him on System Update over on Rumble, fellow Rumbler as well, one of the greatest journalists to ever live. And we're always proud to have Glenn here on the show. And he hasn't been doing this for decades.
Thank you so much, guys.
He's been doing this for like 3 years.
Just 2. Yeah, like 4 years, 5 years. I'm just like I'm like a half decade older than you guys. No more than that.
He's a cub
Great
reporter.
Seeing you.
Great seeing you, Glenn. Thanks so much.
Thank you, bye.
All right, Colonel McGregor is going to be coming up next. We're going to be talking about the military side of this, what we were just talking there at the end with Glenn about on the build up to this war that they are preparing.
I don't think he is that much older than us.
Glenn?
Yeah, I thought we were about the same age. Maybe just a tiny bit. But anyway, he looks great.
And yeah. Colonel McGregor is actually 10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
Which is also pretty remarkable.
I'm 90.
Yeah, we're going to have that too when he's a young buck as well. Fresh out of the academy. No, Colonel McGregor is going to be here. This is deeply troubling, and we don't want to make light of it at all because what's coming is going to be devastating, and it's going many insiders, including Colonel McGregor, saying this could be much larger and a larger scale than we saw the first time around. What does that mean for the United States? What does that mean for United States forces? What does it mean for the region? What does it mean for everything? Well, the propaganda is kicking into high gear, so we'll talk to the Colonel next about that. We will indeed. But first...
Oh, is it my turn? First, we're going to tell you about our friends over at Lear Capital because have you seen the price of precious metals? It is going gangbusters. So, we know the cost of war is stealing from the American dollar. It steals from the working class. But here's what's not being said enough out loud is that war can wipe out our financial future as well. We have to pay for it. Right now, the U.S. is on a dangerous path of spending endless global conflict. Ukraine, Russia, Iran, Israel, take a pick. All of them fueled by borrowed money from the government printing press, running on fumes. War is brutally expensive, and again, a theft and a tax on the middle class and the lower class. So again, you know this, with our national debt raising past, I think my notes say 34 trillion. I think isn't it 37 now?
It's almost 38.
I think it's 36. Yeah, these are old
38.
notes. So again, interest on that debt is at $1 trillion a year. The only solution is printing more money. That means inflation. Weaker dollar, all of your savers are losers. This isn't a scare tactic, it's a wake-up call, and that's why we want to let you know about hedging your bets and making sure that your money is protected. Central banks, billionaires, investors, they're not waiting, they're protecting themselves, and so are we. In our family, we are heavily invested in precious metals, and those metals are doing great. We've been telling you this for years, and it is true. It's held up. Even our kids have holdings. It's not a trend, it's a shift. This is money and wealth preservation as much as it's investment. So it's your turn to act now. Visit our friends at Lear Capital, and they will teach you how to do this. If you go to LearRedacted.com, they're going to get on the phone with you. They're going to ask you what your goals are, what you've got to work with, where you intend to be, and they will help you. You can invest in an IRA. You can invest in something you have in your house. They have a buffet of options to get you started, and you don't need very much to get started. Plus, they have all manner of bonuses that they can get you started with. So you can even call, and in fact, I think that's probably the better way to call and have a real personal conversation. Real people are waiting to have a real conversation with you. The number is 800-613-3557, or head on over to LearRedacted.com.
Well, make no mistake about it, the United States and Israel, and by the way, I'm going to throw the UK into this mix as well. They often get left out, but they are getting ready for a large-scale war with Iran. According to the Washington Post, and Armin posted this today, Washington Post, the U.S. has set 4 conditions for an agreement with Iran. Number 1, complete stop of uranium enrichment program. 2, restrictions on long-range missiles. End of all support for resistance groups in the region. Direct and unmediated talks with the United States. Now, I thought we had destroyed all of their nuclear enrichment programs.
We did a victory lap.
We were told this. This came right out of Sean Hannity's mouth after he just got off the phone with President Trump, remember?
I just spoke to the President of the United States. I have some new information and breaking details to share about tonight's what is historic air campaign. Now, tonight, Iran's nuclear ambitions, they are officially dead. It appears the United States just completely obliterated Iran's top secret Fordow nuclear facility with 6
Yeah, so 6 bunker-busting bombs, it's eliminated. It's set back 30 years, but now suddenly it's back again, and we need to go to war with them again. Colonel Douglas Macgregor is warning us all about what's coming and the impending maybe larger scale war that we are about to see. Right from the get-go, Colonel, you've been saying we are heading into phase 2. Phase 2 will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. How soon do you think we're going to hit that point?
I think it's coming sooner rather than later. I think Glenn Greenwald is right. It's a matter of weeks, could even be days. But we're moving a lot of equipment into the region right now. Aircraft, refueling assets, ships. We've rebalanced the missile inventories in the region. So we're very close to being ready. By the way, I assume you're aware of what's happened with the French seizure of a Russian tanker. Are you not?
Yes, but why don't you explain it to us?
Well, I think this is very important because you can't view what happens in Ukraine and what's happening in the Middle East as entirely separate. I think there's a great deal of connectivity. The French decided to board a Russian tanker at sea. That's, of course, illegal. You can't just board a ship with your national armed forces. French military did it. And Macron has said, well, this is to disrupt the Russian business model. We disrupt it by holding on to this tanker full of oil for 2 weeks or so. Then we'll let it go again. And ultimately, as a result, this will harm Russia. Well, frankly speaking, under international law, this is an act of war against Russia. At the same time, the Estonian government is saying that the waterway that comes out of St. Petersburg and empties into the Baltic is now part of their national waters. Actually, it's an international channel that allows Russian vessels to come out of St. Petersburg and move into the Baltic. And they're talking about effectively blockading the Russians inside St. Petersburg. Now, I don't know how they plan to proceed or what they want to use to do that, but the juxtaposition of the two together right now is very dangerous. I don't expect the Russians or President Putin to react instantly with a declaration of war. I'm sure they're putting together their response. But the fact that this is happening strengthens, believe it or not, the case for war in the Middle East. Because one of the things strategically that the neocons want to do, and they're the ones controlling your government, and that includes the Israel lobby, is to tie down as much Russian military power as they can while they proceed in the Middle East against Iran. So the fact that this has happened now indicates to me that they're much closer to opening the campaign against Iran than we think.
I asked Glenn Greenwald this question a few minutes ago on the show. I'll ask you the same question. Do you see striking similarities to what we saw in the run-up to the first phase of this war? The media propaganda, the pro-Israel posts from influencers we know as part of this paid campaign. Do you see, from a military perspective, whether it's tankers arriving in Doha, Qatar, all of that, do you see similarities there?
Yeah, there's similarities. The only thing I'd point out, though, and you know this better than I do, is I don't think the influencers for Israel are doing very well. I know that they're being paid something in the neighborhood of $7,000 a pop to put out pro-Israeli statements and observations. But I think public opinion in the United States has turned decisively against Israel. Now, that doesn't make any difference in the short run, because the American people can't pay the people on the Hill or in the White House enough money to derail the pro-Israel bent. But nevertheless, the American people have turned away from it. And even though the members of the House and the Senate are handsomely rewarded financially for their support of Israel, even they have to take notice of what the American people think. So I think that's another reason why Mr. Netanyahu came to visit. It was to check signals, make sure everything was ready, make sure everybody understands what has to happen. He issued his directives, not only to President Trump, but also, I'm told, to some cabinet members. So they're ready to go, and I think they want to get this done, if you want to use that terminology, as quickly as possible before they lose control of events in Washington, because the American people are fed up, I think.
Yes. I mean, on the eve of a government shutdown, the United States announced a $123 million contract to replace the bunker busters that we dropped on Iran. So everyone else is going to go without a paycheck this week, but Boeing is going to get this replacement. Now, something that Glenn Greenwald said a little bit ago on our show was that this pause in the war was for both sides to restock, because Israel was low on ammo, the United States was low on ammo. You have said that if the United States was attacked, you've said on this show, we have, I don't know, weeks worth of defense, and then that's it. And so obviously this money laundering scheme is more important than any peace talks or any will of the American people, don't you think?
Well, I think that's true. I mean, the peace talks was always a smokescreen. It was never serious. There's no chance for that 21-point plan to be accepted by anybody, neither the Israelis nor the Palestinians. For the Palestinians, it's sort of willing subjugation to Israeli Jewish dominance and perpetuity. They're not going to sign up for that. And Mr. Netanyahu wants blood. He wants the complete annihilation of the Palestinians, as do his supporters. So there will be no peace settlement. This is you get one of two outcomes ultimately. You either get Israel or you get Palestine. If there's a Palestine, there is no longer an Israel. If you get Israel out of this terrible war that we're about to embark on, there is no Palestine. It's that simple. But I think that what is happening right now with Russia is very important, because in people's minds in Washington, this is diverting Russian attention away from the Middle East. Now, you also brought something else up. You said, what are the similarities? There are some differences this time, I'm told. And that is, we're going to see a lot more gravity bombs. That is, bombs that may have the precision kits on them, but you're talking about bombs that have to be delivered by fighter bombers, various kinds of aircraft, at much closer to Iranian air defenses than in the past. We also are going to rely, I'm told, very heavily on old Tomahawk missiles. In other words, missiles that have been in the inventory for some time. And then we will dip into the precious reserves that we have involving SM-6 Standard missiles, the THAAD missile, and other more rare commodities, but extraordinarily valuable and important. So it's not exactly the same because we cannot bring everything to this that we did the last time.
I mean, last time it lasted whatever it was, 12 days. People went back to their corners, got refilled. They got, you had Mickey there cutting the eyes and getting everything kind of set up like in Rocky. We're all good to go. And now we're back again. I mean, are we talking like a devastation here? Or are we talking like another 12-day sort of pinprick and then we all go back and we all go back to this theater?
That depends heavily, I would say, on Iran's response. Last time, believe it or not, the Iranians exercised a lot of restraint. If they exercise restraint this time around, I'd be surprised. I rather suspect that they will employ whatever they've got. My great concern is, as the damage is sustained in Israel, the demand for the use of a nuclear weapon against Iran will be enormous. The other possibility is that this time, Egypt, the Turks, may not sit this out. There is the outside possibility, the Egyptians in particular, may decide that they can no longer take the hit. They've got to fight. The Turks have been pushed to the edge. Erdogan wants to play both sides to the middle. He's done that very well. But if you listen carefully to the statements he's made recently, it sounds as though the Turks are ready to finally play the cards and show us what they hold. We'll see. Remember, you've got this Saudi-Paki alliance that was created, and all of these states right now have the backing of China. And when I say backing, I'm talking about not just military assistance, but also financial. That's very important to the Turks, very important to the Egyptians. And of course, the Saudis and the Pakis are very interested in that financial backing as well. But the Pakistanis bring nuclear weapons technology to the fight. And the Pakistanis have made it very clear that their bomb is an Islamic bomb. In other words, if their brothers in the Middle East need the weapon, they will have it.
You worked in the Pentagon. You worked in the Pentagon under President Trump. Tucker Carlson, friend of the show, Tucker Carlson, last night dropped this little nugget about IDF soldiers basically haranguing our Pentagon staff in the Pentagon. I want to play this clip and get your response to it. Watch.
During the 12-day war, such as it was with Iran, the U.S. and Israel versus Iran, bombing on all sides, during that short conflict, IDF officers in the Pentagon, foreign military officers in the Pentagon, and by the way, they're not the only foreign military officers in the Pentagon, to be clear. There are NATO officers, they're from other countries, British, but there are a bunch of Israeli Defense Force officers in the Pentagon that week. And during that week, ask anyone who works at the Pentagon, they enraged American Pentagon staff by just barging into meetings, giving orders, making demands, and nobody did anything about it. How can a foreign military officer barge into military headquarters, even if invited, but barge into a meeting and start demanding, we want this, we want that, you need to get on this? Huh? The more you allow that kind of deeply unhealthy behavior, the more you're going to get. And that's exactly what has happened.
Colonel, what do you make of that? Did you ever experience that?
I'm sure it's true. I haven't experienced exactly what he described, but I can tell you that when I was
people don't boss you around. That's why I wouldn't try.
Well, but I was still on active duty. I had to take a trip down to the Naval Warfare Center, and people down there were complaining about the access that Israelis had. They were allowed to see everything, go anywhere, do whatever they wanted. And later on, after I got out of the service and I walked through the Joint Staff area, I was surprised to see large numbers of desks with little Israeli flags on them. And this was either an American citizen with Israeli citizenship as well, or perhaps just Israeli enthusiasts in the group. I don't know. I was surprised to see that. I had not seen that in the past. It's very rare that you see a foreign flag in the Pentagon, unless it's a liaison office where you have somebody stationed from Britain or Australia or somewhere else. So I'm afraid he's probably right, and I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better because, to be perfectly blunt with you, the Israelis and Mr. Netanyahu are in charge. That's your government.
Yeah, 100%. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, always great to see you. Saying weeks, not months, likely for this next conflict. Thank you for warning all of us that it's coming. As always, Colonel, great to see you.
Good to see you both. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Colonel.
Well, you know what? When Redacted has a break is usually when these big things happen. That seems to be.
I know. We have our fall break coming up. The kids are off school. We're just going to take a few days off, and every time. I mean,
we were in Egypt on October 7th when that happened, and it ended up being great for our research purposes because
the Egyptians were telling us
had
the
been
truth,
warning about it days in advance. So we were able to broadcast, but it was like every time we try and take some time with our kids, something happens. And so hopefully that's not the case, but longtime Redacted viewers will notice this pattern. We have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
We are not we're going to take a little trip with our family. We are not going to go start war with Iran.
No, we're not.
Just in case you're wondering.
All right, we got more news to get to here. We're going to talk about celebrities think they're being hunted. And we're also going to talk about new video evidence in the Charlie Kirk assassination. Our guest is going to be joining us, says he will debate anybody as to the veracity of these video claims. And he says no one's taken him up on this because no one can refute it. So we will talk to him. We're going to see this new video evidence here in a few moments on the show. But first, let's talk about cryptocurrency. I don't know if you saw people, obviously, as we're barreling towards war, you're seeing people pouring into cryptocurrency right now, Bitcoin specifically, Ethereum up, and it's here. I mean, cryptocurrency is no longer just emerging. Central banks are buying it, for crying out loud. The latest move cements that in a big way. The Trump media just inked a massive $6.4 billion deal with the Yorkville Acquisition Corporation and Crypto.com. The crypto platform trusted by millions of users worldwide. They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion right now in CRO, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low-fee DeFi, staking rewards, real-world perks like cash back on your spends to establish America's first CRO treasury. So when it's all done, this new company will be the biggest publicly traded CRO holder out there. So if you want to check them out today, you want to go to Crypto.com and check it out. Check them out right now. Go there and learn all about it. Go to Crypto.com and help make crypto great again. Crypto.com is the place to go to check them out.
Well, Hollywood elites are pretending they're being blacklisted for free speech. They're saying McCarthyism is back, and they are inviting us to be in awe of their bravery. Jane Fonda and 550 of her millionaire friends have relaunched what they're calling the Committee for the First Amendment and posting like they're martyrs. Look at these images. We're supposed to see this and think, wow, brave women standing up to authoritarianism. No, in fact, these are delusional elites role-playing as the persecuted from their mansions. Only their cause is idiotic, and they show that they have a basic lack of understanding of history. Look at their statement. It reads, the committee was initially created during the McCarthy era, a time when the federal government repressed and persecuted American citizens for their political beliefs. They targeted elected officials, government employees, academics, and artists who were blacklisted, harassed, silenced, and even imprisoned. Now it's our turn. We need to stand up together. All of that is untrue. I guess I don't really expect Hollywood actresses to know that, but we know that. So let's remind ourselves how stupid they are and look at what actually happened in history. A lot of this came from the video I did over the summer. Here's a screenshot of that image, that video, if you please watch it and share it. McCarthyism is a word that was created by Democrats and the State Department to detract from the fact that Joseph McCarthy was right and there were Soviet spies working in the State Department. It's a lot like how the CIA made up the term conspiracy theorist to detract from the truth about the JFK assassination. We know now that McCarthy was right for two reasons. Number one, when the Soviet Union fell in the 1990s, they gave us the Venona transcripts that showed them in contact with their spies in the State Department. We also know that Joseph McCarthy was right because J. Edgar Hoover was tracking these people in the FBI. He had volumes of information that has now been declassified. He was giving this to the White House. The Truman White House was curiously uninterested, which is yet more proof that Democrats were mysteriously protecting Soviet spies inside the U.S. government. That's a discussion for another day. The point is that when these Hollywood elites say that this was McCarthyism, they're talking about a person who rightly was seeking out foreign agents. Did he, though, go on to destroy people's lives by naming names? Actually, the truth is, if you read the transcripts of those congressional hearings, no, he tried not to. It was Senator Millard Tydings, a Democrat, who accused him of naming names and smearing people. But McCarthy never wanted to. The transcripts for the House Un-American Committee show clearly that McCarthy said many times he thought it would be inappropriate to name names publicly, but the Democrats cornered him. Millard Tydings and his thugs pushed him to name names and then maligned him for it. So this naming of names should not be associated with McCarthy. Read the transcripts, you dumb idiots. Now, when they say in their statement that artists were pursued under McCarthyism, also, idiots, that's wrong. You are not the victim, Jane Fonda. None of the people investigated in the McCarthy hearings had anything to do with Hollywood. The Hollywood blacklist was created by Hollywood executives. Congress, senators, nobody in the government had anything to do with the Hollywood blacklist. That was internal. So when they are playing that their industry has been under attack for decades, they're idiots. They don't know. Now, this is probably not what you were taught in school. American textbooks blame McCarthy for all kinds of nonsense. They never teach that he was right. He actually got his initial information from the State Department. It didn't come from nowhere. It wasn't a prejudice he held. It was from intel. Now, I point this out because it's laughable, not only that these celebrities are using McCarthyism out of ignorance, but that they're pretending to be victims of it now. They're just seizing on Jimmy Kimmel's suspension to cosplay as the persecuted. Where was this outrage when the Biden administration was actually censoring big tech to silence dissent over the pandemic? Where was this outrage when Gina Carano was actually fired for her own personal expression of her views from Disney?
Silence.
Their silence then and their sudden heroism now shows exactly what they are, which is arrogant clowns.
Actually, there wasn't silence. They dogpiled her. You had Pedro Pascal, who plays the Mandalorian. I think he basically took the side of Disney publicly.
He did?
Yeah.
He spoke out against the Jimmy Kimmel firing. He said nothing about Gina Carano. There are plenty of anecdotes about who's the guy who plays Buzz Lightyear.
Oh, Tim Allen?
Tim Allen also being pushed out of Disney because of his conservative views, his support for Trump. He said something about Charlie Kirk recently. And, they don't defend his free speech. It's about Jimmy Kimmel's right to lie. So it's like not only are they self-centered and self-serving and they have tunnel vision for only the politics they like, they're just misreading history and allowing it to present themselves as these brave victims, like these Annie Leibovitz type portraits. It's like, look at me. Looking in the face of danger.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Right. Yeah. Natalie Portman. Not Natalie Kidman. That's not a person. I had a whole... Michael Keaton. All of these people you would hope would have some kind of read a book before you use the word McCarthyism, but they don't. Here, Sean Penn, of course. Ted Danson, Viola Davis, Whoopi Goldberg, Winona Ryder, John Hamm, George Takei, Elizabeth Shue, Alyssa Milano, J.J. Abrams. Does none of them? You use McCarthyism to your own advantage to glorify Hollywood. Maybe you should look it up. Stupid idiots.
Well, yeah, George Takei also, I think, even posted in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death some really horrific things. Total lies, by the way. He got totally ratioed on social media, but they don't look up anything because they live in these little cloistered bubbles.
Yeah.
I mean, they live in those these little Hollywood bubbles where they don't actually interact with human beings or real people. They've got a whole bunch of sycophants that hang around them.
I'm offended by the stupidity of it. So anyhow, I had to say that because it makes me so mad when people use that in the wrong way. Like, know the story before you use stupid things like that.
Thank you for subscribing to the show. We really appreciate it. We don't say it enough, but yeah, I mean, if you subscribe, it's totally free, or follow. I don't know what they call it now. They call it subscribe. They call it follow. I don't know. If you can follow us on Rumble, you can follow us on YouTube, you can follow us on X, and it's totally free to do that. So thank you guys. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Hey, coming up here on the show, we're going to speak to Jason Goodman from Crowdsource The Truth. He has new video evidence he says is irrefutable, and it busts the entire Charlie Kirk assassination narrative wide open. And he says, hey, anyone wants to debate me, I will debate you. He's had no takers so far to disprove what he says is irrefutable evidence. So we're going to see that evidence, and we're going to talk to Jason here in a moment. We are indeed. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Chapter, because millions of seniors are on the wrong Medicare plan, and many don't even know it. In fact, a recent Department of Justice sued 3 major Medicare brokers for allegedly claiming to be unbiased, but instead they were secretly steering seniors towards plans with biggest kickbacks for them. These plans were not the best for their clients. That's why we've partnered with Chapter, because they don't do that. They don't work for the government or big insurance. They work for you. They're the only advisors that compare every Medicare plan nationwide to find what's best for you. They'll even help you if you're hit with wrongful medical bills. That's real advocacy, and they've saved the average senior $1,100 per year. And in fact, one of our good friends is using it and saved thousands going forward. And the best part is that it's free. For our audience, it only costs you a 20-minute phone call. So call them at 202-655-5811 or go to askchapter.org/redacted. You'll be glad you did. In fact, most people say they wish they'd called sooner. So call them. They're the only Medicare advisor we trust here at Redacted. Askchapter.org/redacted. All right, we'll get in your super chats now and any questions you may have for Jason here in this next segment about the video evidence and the Charlie Kirk assassination. So any kind of questions you have, we'll try to get to them here at the end. Well, new video evidence has emerged showing what our next guest believes is irrefutable evidence that Charlie Kirk was not shot from the front, but from the back. Jason Goodman from Crowdsource The Truth says Charlie Kirk was shot from behind using a low muzzle velocity projectile. He's willing to debate anyone, by the way, who thinks that he's wrong. So we are an open platform here at Redacted. We welcome all ideas and conversation. And we wanted to have Jason on the show so he could show us his evidence and have a dialogue with him. Jason, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Clayton. Good to see you again.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, so again, maybe we go back to for people who are just new to this story, I guess, like what is the official story, and then what does your evidence, you say, show us?
Of course, the official story is that Tyler Robinson fired a high-powered rifle, 30-06 round, a supersonic rifle round that has a tremendous amount of kinetic energy. Everybody who is an expert in ballistics and hunting, which I am not, but all of the experts that I observe say this type of round would make a huge blowout, even in a much larger animal than a human. You shoot a deer in the neck. People have tested it on cow thighs and things like that. And there should have been a tremendous blowout in the exit wound. And so people have presumed that the small hole that we see in the front of Charlie Kirk's neck that he bleeds out of in a very disturbing way in a lot of the videos that people have seen, that is an entry wound, because entry wounds from rifle rounds are small, exit wounds are large. And of course, we have a lot of people who have audio waveform analysis, acoustic triangulation, that they can do these so-called crack thump calculations where they're measuring the differential between the explosive charge that launches the projectile out of the gun and the sound of the bullet actually breaking the sound barrier. I'm also not a math expert. I can't directly challenge the calculations that experts make in that. I just don't do the math. But it's important to remember, Clayton, that whoever it is that did this, they have a lot of information about the public. In 1963, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, we can debate on another day whether Abraham Zapruder was there by chance or planted there by the FBI. A lot of people have different opinions on that. But there was basically one guy that we know of in the crowd running silent film, 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter, whatever it was, even if there's 3 or 4 films. We don't have multiple high resolution audio recordings. People didn't have access to digital waveform analysis. All of these things are available today. So we saw a similar occurrence in Butler, Pennsylvania, in that there was an assassination attempt involving a high-powered rifle. And I believe it was Mike Adams, the health ranger. He was the first guy I saw. I didn't know anything about this type of crack thump triangulation analysis, but he did a very comprehensive video. And certainly now, most people know that that can be done. And if this is a complex conspiracy, we should anticipate that the conspirators would anticipate that public investigations would include this type of analysis, and they would want to bake into the cake, as it were, some method of fooling people who would do this analysis. And what I'm about to show you guys explains how that happened, explains why the shot did not come from the front. And I was just watching earlier today, Dr. Chris Martenson has a new video out where he's explaining more about what he thinks happened. He does rely in some of his research on the crack thump triangulation calculations, but he had a question that he couldn't answer that I'm going to answer for you, Clayton, and Natalie, and all of your viewers here today.
All right. And, I should point out yesterday, Rob O'Neill, the man who killed Osama bin Laden, is on the record now saying that right from the very beginning, none of it made sense to him. And he's shot people in the face. He's like, this story is not making... Anyway, I've never shot anyone in the face. So Rob O'Neill has a vast experience doing that. He knows all too well what that looks like. Okay, so let's walk through what you have here and what you say is irrefutable evidence that the shot did not come from the front.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not saying that I know more than people who have that type of firsthand experience. I don't need to have firsthand experience shooting people or studying ballistics to just observe all of the professionals who do have that experience, Rob O'Neill, Chris Martenson, Zeb Boykin, all these other, Range Day Bro, all of these guys who do have a lot of experience. I see the experts disagree, and that causes me to believe that we're looking at something novel. So let me show you this. This is the video that I am relying upon, and this is a composite image that I created in Adobe Photoshop. Now, to be clear, I didn't create any of these dots. These are all derived from original video frames from 2 different versions of the same video. Zeb Boykin is a U.S. Marine and now a citizen journalist, a YouTuber, a podcaster. And he came to my attention very early in this investigation. He was doing ballistic analysis and he went viral. And I saw him on Owen Schroyer's show, and Owen and I had the same immediate reaction to seeing this video. It was substantially higher quality than really almost any of the other videos that we've seen. Even in Chris Martenson's evaluation, he says some of these videos look like they were shot on a potato. This one exhibits characteristics that cause me to believe that it came from the original videographer from their phone. And by that, I mean it was full resolution, 1920 by 1080 HD. It seemed very high bit rate. It doesn't have a lot of blockiness or smeariness. It looked like a very good video. Now, when I contacted Zeb, I asked him to send me the video, and he did. And I began to interrogate it in some of the tools that I use, and there were some strange things that I observed about it. First of all...
Now, we should point out, Jason, if our audience is new to you, your background is that you do this for a living. When you worked in Hollywood, frankly, You worked on major motion pictures in the visual effects department. So you know this stuff. I think you said you started using Photoshop when you were like in diapers, basically, right?
13 years old, yes. First version of Photoshop that I used was 1.07, and I think it was 1985, 6, something like that. But I've been doing digital imaging for a long, long time. And so that's exactly where my expertise lies. And again, experts, whether they're neurosurgeons, ballistic experts, or whatever, they're looking at all of this through the lens of distorted digital imagery. So the first step in this evaluation is we need to understand these digital videos and the digital images that we're looking at. So Zeb sent me this video, and the first thing I noticed was that it did not open in QuickTime Player on my Mac when I double-clicked on it, just like a movie from your phone would. And so I started to examine it, and I first thought that it was an MPEG transport stream, but upon further interrogation, I've been continuing my investigation since we spoke. I've discovered that it wasn't that. It's an MPEG stream that's encoded in what's called high 10, which is a subset of the H.264 protocol. This is not a format that the iPhone creates. The iPhone is capable of making high dynamic range videos, but not in this high 10 format. The other thing that I noticed about it is that it's encoded at 20 frames per second. We can see right here, it's got a pretty high bit rate, but it's 20 frames per second. And I realize this gets pretty technical, but it's important.
Right. Well, most films, when people see films in a theater, it's usually at 24 frames a second. A lot of phones, you can set it to 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second. 20, though, is odd to me.
You're exactly right. The 24 frame per second frame rate is the cinema frame rate of a movie camera. And so digital cameras that want to mimic cinema cameras can shoot at 24. European television standards are 25. North American television standards are 30. High definition can be 60, but 20 is very unusual. And again, it's a format that the iPhone cannot create. This high 10 MPEG profile, it's not something that any Android phone, it's not something that any iPhone or action camera or, consumer, prosumer camera can create. So I began to investigate this 20 frame per second file, and I found these two dots in the video, and I've highlighted them here in this image. People can see we've got this dot right here. These three dots create a line. And when I started talking to Zeb Boykin about this 20 frame per second video, days later, someone sent him the same video, but at 30 frames per second. Now, this is where it becomes very important. I was looking at these videos, and in order to get a 20 frame per second video from a 30 frame per second original, there's a couple of things that you could do. The most obvious would be to sort of slow it down, but then you'd play it back and you'd notice that the sound is slow, the motion is slow. There'd be certain obvious things that you could see, and these videos did not exhibit those things. Another way you could do it is you could just drop 10 frames every second, but then you'd get this sort of jerky, juddery motion that also wouldn't look natural, and I did not observe that. The other thing you could do is a complex process called optical flow, but that also creates artifacts, and I didn't observe any of that. So when I was looking at the 30 frame per second video, that's where I found this third dot right here behind Charlie's head. Now, I want to be very careful to not show anything that's going to get us dinged on any of the platforms, but I'm going to switch to Adobe After Effects here, and I want to show people what I'm talking about in the difference between the 20 frame per second and the 30 frame per second video. So here we see the projectile right here. This is the second dot that I just showed everybody, and it's headed towards Charlie. Now, my allegation is that this originates in a video that was shot at 240 frames per second. In the 20 frame video, you see when I advance forward, can you guys see that very acute disturbance of his shirt? It almost looks like an invisible hand is pinching the collar and pulling it up. Can you guys see that?
Yeah. It looks like someone's pinching it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I allege is happening right there is that this is a low muzzle velocity projectile, very likely a bullet fired from an air rifle or an air pistol traveling at 500 feet per second. And I arrive at that 500 feet per second number because I've applied this scale. Now, it would be a complex mathematical problem to actually measure the distance between these dots. But if we begin with the hypothesis that this video was shot at 240 frames per second, that gives us an original that is evenly divisible by 20 and by 30. If we divide a 240 frame video by 12 and use 1 out of every 12 frames, we get an even, smooth 20 frames per second. If we take that same 240 frame per second video and divide by 8, we get an even, smooth 30 frames per second. But we're using 1 out of every 8 or 1 out of every 12, and that results in a different set of frames being used to make up each video. That's how I got this third dot. But we certainly know, even with my simple mathematical skills, that 3 dots make a line. And this is a line traveling directly toward Charlie's head. The next frame of the video, he's been hit, and it comes out the front of his neck, and it catches on the shirt collar. It's lost so much of its kinetic energy traveling through his body that when it hits the shirt collar, it pulls and stretches the shirt quite dramatically. I'm going to switch right now to the 30 frame video. So here we have different frames from the 30 frame video, and we see there is the third frame of the projectile. It hits him, and we see that disruption. Now this is recompressed. You can see it's much lower quality, lower bit rate than the 20 frame video. And so now you see a different kind of disruption of the shirt. I think what's happening is this projectile is sort of moving around inside his shirt. It's been caught by the shirt like a net. And now the shirt, when the fabric relaxes, it goes back down the shirt, and it's kind of, falling out the bottom of his shirt as he's shot. And then in the next frames, we see this exit wound out the front of his neck. Remember, the experts are disagreeing. Is this an entry wound or an exit wound? Well, an exit wound from a supersonic rifle round, which has a tremendous amount of kinetic energy, would create a big explosive blowout and a lot of material. So if he was shot from the front, it's pretty implausible by most experts' estimation that his spine could stop a bullet. Now, a lot of people say, oh, bullets do strange things when they enter the body. And again, I don't have the expertise to personally evaluate that. I'm taking their word for it. But what I believe is happening is this low muzzle velocity projectile is hitting him just below the base of his skull. And this is where we can answer Dr. Martin's question. It hits just below the base of his skull, where it damages his spinal cord, causing that involuntary reaction. I forget the medical term that he used, but it's severe brain trauma that he's talking about. And that happens instantly, causing Charlie's arms to go up and his fists to clench. It pops out the front of his throat, goes down the shirt, and he's immediately dead because it's ruptured his carotid artery and his jugular vein. And just to get to the speed that I've derived. So I've introduced this arbitrary scale, and it doesn't matter if these are feet, inches, meters, these are units per video frame. And what we see here is, we know that Charlie Kirk is about 6'4", and he's seated. So we're seeing about 3 feet from seat to the top of his head. And I asked ChatGPT, if a projectile were fired by a gun that could travel 500 feet per second, which is the muzzle velocity of something that I've found out about called a B&W M50. I'm told this is the most powerful air pistol available, and this thing launches projectiles at approximately 500 feet per second. So if a projectile were shot out of that gun or something very similar towards Charlie Kirk from close range, it could certainly be fatal. And ChatGPT tells me at 500 feet per second, if photographed at 240 frames per second, the projectile would move approximately 2.08 feet in 1/240th of a second. And these 3 dots are very close to equidistant. Given that Charlie, we're looking at about 3 feet of Charlie here, it looks to me like 2 to 2.5 feet between each of these. And This is the empirical evidence that this is a projectile fired at Charlie. Now, before we get questions from people, people are going to say to me, but wait a minute, Jason, I've looked at that 20 frame per second video, and there's a problem because it looks like this projectile is moving away from Charlie. This one appears first in the sequence, and this one appears next. So it's moving in reverse. And we can actually even look at that. We'll go back to After Effects over here for a second, and let's look at our 20 frame per second video. So we can see as we zoom out, Charlie's been hit, and here is that first position of the projectile. If I reverse the video 1 frame, there's the projectile there. As we move forward, that projectile appears to be moving back. But here's where it's important to understand video compression technology. MPEG uses interframe compression, meaning it's not just measuring pixels within the image. Here I'm sitting in a simulated room, and my hands are moving, my mouth is moving, but nothing in the background is moving. So the video compressor that's sending my video to you over the internet is not updating these pixels around here in the ceiling or in this background image of the Empire State Building there. None of that stuff is updating from frame to frame. My hands are, my mouth is. When we introduce something into a motion video, particularly one that's been transcoded and recompressed as this one has, as evidenced by that file I showed earlier with the 20 frame per second and giving us all the information about the file. This has been recompressed to a format that could not have been produced in an iPhone. What happens is, while the video is encoded, there is an algorithm that tracks moving pixels. And when it's my hand or it's a car or something moving along, it can track that very easily. But when it is a high contrast, very small item like these white dots, essentially white dots presented against dark backgrounds, the encoder can become confused, and these things can be displayed temporally out of order. And I allege that that is what's happening, that this dot, if we could get the original 240 frame file, we would see it first here, then here, then here, then it hits the back of his skull, deflects downward approximately 19 degrees, comes out his throat after destroying his spinal cord and killing him, gets caught in the shirt, goes down the front of the shirt, and that's it. Oh, sorry, one more thing before we go to questions, because people are going to say, no, Jason, acoustic analysis, we have cracked thump. How did that supersonic sound get there? An air gun doesn't make supersonic sound. And I want to be clear, everything I'm saying is my opinion. Clayton and Natalie don't necessarily support anything that I'm saying, and I'm not implicating this company or any other company. I'm just demonstrating these products as examples of technology that exists. There's something called Digital Trigger Technologies that sells the DigiTrigger. And this is an item that you can put into your gun. It replaces an AR-style trigger, and inside this handle, it has a digital programmable component. And again, I'm not an expert, but I've watched videos made by the inventor of this product, and he says you can program it, if you're a sniper, to pull the trigger in a certain way, I guess a light touch for a sniper. You can also program it so one pull of the trigger fires the bullets twice, or one pull of the trigger fires continuously. The developer of this product in the videos cautions people to follow the law in the state that they're in. But the point is that digital trigger allows you to program the gun to do a lot of things. Now, what I am an expert in from doing visual effects, like bullet time in The Matrix, where lots of cameras are programmed to fire sequentially in very precise timing, or in 3D cinematography, where cameras need to fire very precisely. I know if you have one digitally triggered thing, you can very precisely time two things to be simultaneously triggered. So if someone was in this tunnel behind Charlie while he was being shot, and I don't know if people have seen that video, but there was a tunnel, sort of an underpass there behind where he was seated. And if someone were standing in that tunnel with the air rifle, they could pull a digital synchronized trigger and it could simultaneously fire a supersonic rifle on the building far away. Now, I'm not saying that this person is the shooter, but here we are looking at the other side of the tunnel. This is Charlie's tent over here. He's seated right here to the left of this woman's hat. And this is the guy who removed the SD card from the camera right behind Charlie. Everybody else is running for their lives. He's up here, perched in a spot where I don't know if you could get the angle on Charlie from here with a rifle, an air rifle or an air pistol, but if you could, you'd be hidden from sight from the crowd. The sound of the air pistol would be quite hidden. And there's one final thing that I want to say. I know I'm running my mouth a lot, but a lot of people heard this research and they said, oh, Jason is saying that Charlie got shot from behind. That means he got shot by a modified camera that was shooting bullets at him. And that is not correct, because here we see the camera behind Charlie and we can see that the line from its lens doesn't line up with the trajectory of those bullets. It really doesn't line up at all. But what it does introduce is the possibility that a targeting camera could have been used. The video feed from that camera could have been fed to something like, and again, I'm not implicating the long shot company, but these guys make a bunch of Wi-Fi cameras that you put down range near your target, and then you sit with your iPad when you don't have clear visibility to the target, and you aim your gun and you shoot at the target.
It's remarkable. I mean, I have so many questions. I know our audience has so many questions. But I guess to bottom line it, you don't believe that he was shot from the front based on the video evidence that you're saying here. You've put this out there for anyone that wants to debate you. Has anyone come forward that says they want to try to refute what you found here?
No. And in fact, when I started publishing this on my X account at JG_CSTT, I put a challenge up. And this is not a bet. This is not a sweepstakes. I'm just saying, just like I would hire a freelance photographer and pay them for their photography, I'm willing to pay $100 to anyone who can refute the facts that I've just laid out. And X has started putting this content warning, saying that this is sensitive content. And now everything I post gets this sensitive content warning, and people can't see whatever it is that I'm posting. I even posted a thing saying that they've removed one of the sensitive content posts, and that got a sensitive content warning. I'm talking here about H.264 video, and that's got a sensitive content warning. So I think this information, I can't say why, but it's being suppressed. People don't want to address it. And again, anyone who wants to refute any of the measurable facts, these are empirical facts that I've just laid out. Everything I've showed you, it's an existing technology. I'm not talking about some imaginary plasma-powered ballistic drone that came out of nowhere and shot Charlie Kirk. I'm not talking about bullets ricocheting off of bulletproof vests that he obviously wasn't wearing. I've laid out a very detailed explanation of what happened. I've shown examples of technologies that could have been used, or certainly other units of the same capability could have been used. And I believe this explains everything that can't be explained, the nature of the wound, why he had that traumatic brain injury, this video being shot at 240 frames per second. Someone is going to have an image of the individual who made that video, because there is this frame in the video where we see a photographer here. This guy looks to be a news photographer to me. He looks like he's got a press pass. He doesn't look like a college student. He's got a big professional looking still camera. He's taking pictures. Again, I'm not implicating this individual in any wrongdoing. I'm just saying I expect that this person would have a very high resolution image of whoever it is that took this video that I allege was photographed at 240 frames per second and deceptively presented to us at 20 frames per second.
Jason Goodman, will you stick around for our Rumble Premium today and answer a few questions from our audience? If anyone has I see a lot of questions coming in. So if you wouldn't mind, I've got some questions. I know people on our staff have some questions, and I see the thousands of you watching right now probably have a few questions. So if you would, for a few minutes, hang out. We're just going to go over to Rumble Premium here in a moment. So just hang with us, Jason, if you'd be so kind. But first, thanks to all of you for subscribing and being a part of our show here. We really, really appreciate it. Again, we want to present all ideas to you, and you guys make the you take the information and run with it, make your own determinations on it. We still don't have, to my mind, the medical examiner's report. I know this can take up to 3 months sometimes. There's many cases where it's 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months before you get a medical examiner's report. When will we see that? So I think that will be, hopefully, if it's an honest medical examiner's report, we'll finally put to bed the answer of whether or not this was a 30-06 rifle round that hit Charlie Kirk. Hopefully we'll answer a lot of questions, I hope. So we'll be waiting on that. But thank you guys for being a part of our show. I should point out that we do have our Redacted store. If you'd like to come over and support independent media, you can do that by going to redactedstore.com. Check out our new wares that are up there right now, including all of our fall paraphernalia, everything heading into the cold winter months, new hoodies, new shirts, and our brand new hoodie that just rolled out, which is our Don't Tread on Me hoodie, which is my new favorite. I should point out they run a little small, so if you normally wear a large, like I usually wear a large, you probably want to order an extra large in the hoodie sizes. They just run a little bit small, so check those out. Redactedstore.com is the place to go to do all of that. So we are going to move over to Rumble Premium. Again, the whole show is free, but we want to support our free speech friends over at Rumble. And just going to hang out for a few minutes for anybody who's a Rumble Premium member. Come on over. The water is warm over there. Do we have how do people come over there, David? What's the URL in case people want to sign up for Rumble Premium? Anybody? Yeah, the Rumble Premium URL is Rumble...
Sorry, I didn't have it queued up.
Sorry. Just curious if you guys know the URL.
Sorry, man. I have to mute when I'm doing the switch so I can hear the stream. So
all right. Well, we'll figure that out. But anyway, hey, come on over to Rumble and just go to rumble.com/premium, I think is what it is. I don't know. We'll find out. If anyone knows, let me know.
Yes, that is correct. I just queued it up. It's rumble.com/premium.
Rumble.com/premium. All right. I think David had a stroke. I'm not really sure what happened there. Rumble.com/premium is the place to go. Come on over there and check us out. We're going to hang out for a few minutes with Jason and answer any questions you have. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you back here live on Monday as usual. All right. We are live on Rumble only. Is that right? Rumble.